What do you do when your child or your teen has a meltdown? How do you help your kids bounce back after suffering a bitter disappointment or worse, trauma or grief? Teaching your kids resilience is so key to their success as an adult that I've asked a resilience coach to join us here. This will help us master resilience for both ourselves and our kids. So don't go anywhere. Before we begin, I'd like to thank our proud sponsor of this episode and the Fatherhood Challenge, Ingenious Prep. Ingenious Prep is the world's premier admissions consulting firm, proud to be officially recognized as the country's top college admissions consultants, helping students prepare for admissions to top schools through individualized educational programs that increase chances of admission by up to 10 times. Ingenious Prep students work with former admission officers to differentiate themselves from other competitive students in 3 areas colleges evaluate students: in academics, extracurricular activities, and personal characteristics. Just this past admission cycle, Ingenious Prep students have secured 110 offers from Ivy League schools, 268 offers from top 20 schools, and 904 offers from top 50 schools. Ingenious Prep student success lies within the fact that Ingenious Prep is an all-in-one consulting firm offering every service a family needs, whether it be test prep, tailored candidacy building mentorship, academic mentorships, the Leadership and Innovation Lab, soft skills courses, writing courses, and other customized programs to develop their application persona to the most effective and authentic extent to share with colleges. Just click on the link in the episode description to book a free strategy call with one of Ingenious Prep's college experts, or you can visit ingeniusprep.com. That's ingeniusprep.com. and let them know you came from the Fatherhood Challenge.
Welcome to the Fatherhood Challenge, a movement to awaken and inspire fathers everywhere to take great pride in their role and to challenge society to understand how important fathers are to the stability and culture of their family's environment. Now, here's your host, Jonathan Guerrero.
Greetings, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. Also joining us is Russell Harvey. Russell's passion and mission is giving others the tools and techniques to create the right conditions to apply transformation to their roles as parents and leaders. Russell, thank you so much for being on the Fatherhood Challenge.
Oh, thank you so much for asking me, Jonathan. It's an absolute pleasure to be here and to have all of the listeners tuning in. Hello to you all.
One of my favorite questions to start out with is a dad joke. So, Russell, what is your favorite dad joke?
I'm in Leeds, UK, and there is in Scotland, there's the Edinburgh comedy festival coming up again. So I actually had a look for last year's top 10 jokes for last year. Now, for me, a dad joke has to have this real mixture of like groan and laughter to it at the same time. So the number one joke, which I think sort of fits this bill from the last year's Edinburgh Fringe Festival, was as follows. I started dating a zookeeper, but it turned out they were a cheetah. So that should do the laugh and the groan at the same time. And that's actually from a Lorna Rose Treen that we need to attribute that to. And then I saw another one that caught my eye in the top 10. I thought this is number 4 or 5. So this one is, when women gossip, they get called two-faced. But when men gossip, it's called a podcast. So those ones tickled me, and hopefully they tickle everybody else as well. So those are 2 for you there, a 2 for 1.
Russell, they were true dad jokes in every sense. I enjoyed it. All right, well, let's dive right in. Russell, you have an impressive career. What is your story and journey that led you to become a resilience coach?
I'm being cheeky now because it's not a resilience coach, Jonathan. I am the resilience coach. If you want to find me anywhere, it's not any old resilience coach. It's the resilience coach. I managed to snaffle that one for a website domain, so I'm sticking to it. So my journey, I've always really been interested in human behavior. I think I've been fascinated since a really early age about how come people do the things that they do? How come we do behave in this particular way or we don't behave in this particular way? And the vast majority of my career has been in learning and development and leadership development. But it started 1996 in Hong Kong. So I was traveling around the world for a year with my lovely girlfriend, who later became my wife. And I was teaching in Hong Kong. I was teaching English language lessons to essentially just local Hong Kong Chinese. And in the room, some form of magic was happening. I didn't know what it was, but I just thought, you know what? I think I want to do this for a living. But I knew I didn't want to be a teacher teaching in a school. I just knew that wasn't me. And then I came back to the UK and thought, you know what? I think I want to do training, because the magic that was happening in the room, it turns out later, was people learning, people having light bulb moments, people going from confused face to aha, I understand face. That did something to me. That did something to my heart and my gut and my head. And it actually just sort of gave me a zap of a wonderful feeling. And that goes into my purpose. So one of the dimensions of being resilient is having a purpose. And we may talk about this later. But by the year 2025, I want to positively affect 100,000 people. And right now I'm up to about 72,312-ish. Essentially. And so I am, when I mean by positively affect, is there anybody that I support to have their realization, their light bulb moments, their learning moments. And so when I came back from Hong Kong in 1997, essentially I had a career in learning and development. And today I call myself a facilitator and a coach. And the fact that the resilience coach came about is that my last permanent role was at a business called the Co-op, and they're cooperatives worldwide. And not long after I joined, it got itself into a real pickle as a business. And I was just there supporting all of the leaders, the top 300 leaders around. Actually, this business is in trouble. What do we do? How do we resolve this? And I said, well, there's this word resilience, and there's this an acronym called VUCA, which people may or may not be familiar with. And I went, all of our approaches, our solutions, our answers are in there. So my specialism is how to lead yourself and others really well in a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. And that is the Resilience Coach.
In what ways can dads model resiliency for their kids? What are the long-term impacts of such modeling?
I think the really important thing right now is how I describe and define resilience. So I would love, yourself, Jonathan, and everybody that's listening now to get their heads and hearts around how I define resilience, which is as follows. So resilience is about springing forward with learning. Springing forward with learning. So I'm personally not a fan of the term bounce back, because we can't actually go backwards. There's a risk that when a challenging event happens to us, yes, we do need to recover from it. But then we are quite often say to ourselves, right, I'll now bounce back. And there's a risk. It's a subconscious instruction to the brain to go back to how you were. And you can't do that. Resilient people are perpetually learning, springing forward with learning. So to answer your question, how leaders, parents, dads can actually cultivate resilience in their children and in their team is to cultivate optimism and the growth mindset. That's what they can do. And then, so I'll explain what they are and then the long-term benefits. So optimism is the fact that we're trying to move away from toxic positivity. So how you get to feelings of hope and feeling positive is to actually think about optimism first. Now, if you look up the dictionary definition of optimism, it's got the word positive to describe it. So they're heavily intertwined. And the starting point of optimism is the fact that it's grounded in reality. So one of the things that we have to find a way throughout life to accept with good grace is that life is unfair. It's just really horrible things happen to wonderful, amazing, gorgeous people. Life is unfair. So cultivating that attitude and that understanding in your children and in the team that you lead is really helpful. So optimism is grounded in reality. So you do need to understand that if there's a size and scale of a problem or something's not working in the way that you would like it to, we have to be open and honest about that. We have to be really clear about what the size of the challenge is, of what the problem is, and find a way to talk about it without going into a negative spiral, but just talking about it openly and honestly. Then the next thing to do is to immediately think about, so what are my strengths? What are my skills? What are my capabilities? What are my attitudes? What's my current level of resilience that I've got actually that can face into this challenge? And when you focus on that for yourself and the people around you, then you can start to get genuine feelings of hope. And then you start to feel positive to go, do you know what? There is a real challenge we've got. But actually, if I think about myself, the strengths, skills, capabilities, attitude, mindset, behaviors, experiences I've got, and those around me have got, then actually you start to get genuine feelings of hope and face into it. And part of that is cultivating a growth mindset. So actually, somebody from the US, a lady called Carol S. Dweck, has specialized in fixed and growth mindset. So she's got done some great TED Talks around this, if people listening now want to find out more. But a growth mindset is absolutely cultivating in your children and your team, the people around you, getting them to actually really get into the place that they are perpetually learning. They can always grow. They can always improve. And how you do that is about giving feedback and praising people on the effort that they are putting into things. Less about the outcome, the end result, the achievement. You absolutely acknowledge that, so if a child comes home and, brings, the drawing and a painting from, kindergarten or, a certificate from school, you don't suddenly put that to one side and go, tell us about the effort you put in. You absolutely praise this brilliance of the masterpiece of art that you're going to put on the fridge. And, they've got a certificate, you're going to praise that, but also start to ask some questions about actually what was the effort they put in? Where did they persevere when they found it challenging? How did they overcome that? And so it's about asking some open coaching questions around that. So the long-term benefits of doing optimism and growth mindset is you enable the people around you and your children to understand what their strengths are. And I will talk about this a lot, taking a strengths-based approach, because when you identify what naturally energizes you, then that builds natural resilience and natural confidence. And there's many studies that have shown that if a child has had a really difficult background, a bit difficult upbringing, when someone, a parent, a guardian, or a mentor, or a teacher, or a guidance counselor, clicks that there's something that they enjoy doing, and they actually find a way to just find opportunities for this particular child to do these things that they enjoy doing, and just find multiple opportunities for them to do them week by week, then actually they come out the other side of their difficult, challenging experiences far more resilient than those children that didn't have that experience. So optimism, growth mindset, those will cultivate the springing forward with learning, and they will cultivate natural resilience.
I absolutely love that. My wife and I have had fascinating discussions. It started out as a disagreement over the whole strength-based approach mindset, because the way I grew up and the way I was taught in my main thing, I feel like I wear many hats, but one of the main hats I wear is music. I'm a musician and a teacher.
Terrific.
I
Great.
teach piano and I teach cello. And so I grew up with this whole mindset and the way I was taught was not strengths based. It was focused on your weaknesses. Find all of your weaknesses. Let's figure out what they are. Let's bring them to the surface, and let's do drills, exercises, everything. And let's turn every single weakness into a strength to where you don't have any weaknesses. And that was the focus. And so my wife and I have had quite a few discussions over that in the past. And I got to tell you, she's right. No surprise there.
I think it's because it's about this word energy. So when I come from the strengths-based approach, it's a case of there's a particular psychometric called StrengthScope, that I utilize with my clients. And clever people and I have come up with, there's 24 strengths, and you do a psychometric and you come up with your significant 7. So you can't be naturally equally energized by all 24 of these strengths. There's 7 of them that are your significant 7 things that you're energized by, and everybody's psychometric is different. So it's about harnessing those. And with so many of my leadership clients, when we do their psychometric, their eyes will naturally go to their low score. And they go, okay, so I presume my homework, Russell, is for me to work upon my weaknesses. And I go, no, it isn't. We're going to look at those things that you've got less energy for. They're not a weakness, less energy for them. But what your homework is to look at these significant 7 these things that you love doing and will be naturally good at, your homework is to do more of those as much as humanly possible. And for so many of my clients, it's like a light bulb. Wow. Oh my God. What? I don't have to spend all this time on my weaknesses. But it's also been really clear that we find a different way and put strategies in place to think about, okay, so there's something that you have to do as part of your job role. It is genuinely yours to do, but you don't have natural energy for it. So there's multiple strategies that we can put in place to actually support you in those moments. So, your parents, Jonathan, would have been, wonderful and great. We will do these things about, well, I'm not very good at this, I'd like to get better at it. That's fine. But it's understanding if you spend all of your time focusing on the things that naturally de-energize you, it's going to batter you because you're spending all your time doing something that de-energizes you. So it'll just make you feel even more de-energized. So we're trying to make sure we don't get into that place.
Thank you for explaining that a little bit more in depth, because I've been curious as to why. I mean, experientially, I've seen the strength-based approach achieve and do more, but I've never understood the mechanics of why. So your explanation was very, very helpful in that regard. I appreciate that. One of my favorite quotes that I've heard my father-in-law say a lot is that there's no such thing as failure, only new data. And It's become a favorite of mine. So when a child suffers bitter disappointment, what is the boundary and difference between coddling and helping them become resilient and recover?
Yeah, so for me, this goes to, I'm going to back to the strengths-based approach. So 2 of these 24 strengths are compassion and empathy. Okay. So we're all, energized differently. Some of us are going to have little natural energy for either, and that's okay. Some of us are going to have lots of energy for both. Okay. And some of us are going to have lots of energy for one or the other. By sheer coincidence, 2 of my 7 significant 7 are compassion and empathy. But these play out I want everybody that's listening now to think about as well about what's the difference between help and support. So the definition around the compassion strength is that we've got varying levels of energy, some of us high, some of us medium, some of us low. The compassion descriptor is that you deeply care about the well-being of the person or the people in front of you. You genuinely want to do things for them. You want to help them. You want to look after them. You want to take care of them. And that's great. It's lovely. And I do an awful lot of work in the UK with the National Health Service that we have. And that's the caring profession. So I support them around coaching skills. And we have lots of conversations around, is the likelihood that you've got a compassion driver because of the job role that you do. But it's actually, how much are you helping your clients and patients, and how much are you supporting them to do things for themselves? So if your compassion driver, energizer, is too much, then you will be coddling. For you and your phraseology, your question that you asked, there is a risk that you'll go into coddling and it'll be too much in the space of the person not learning from the experience. So empathy, the empathy descriptor, is about you have lots of energy to actually discover what is making this person tick in front of you. How are they thinking and feeling? How are they processing their thoughts, their feelings, their experiences? You will ask open coaching questions. You'll empathize with them. You'll be understanding their point of view, and you won't necessarily be wanting to slip in to fix it for them. Okay. So it is understanding that people's emotions belong to them. We cannot, use our emotions to fix somebody else's emotions, even though we desperately try. And I still fall into that trap on a regular basis. And when love comes into play, loved ones, then absolutely, the compassion is going to come to the fore. So it's about tapping into your empathy driver. And even if you've got little energy for it, how you role model that is essentially being curious and asking questions about how they're thinking and feeling, how they want to process it, what they want to do with their thoughts and feelings, how it's impacting their behaviors. They'll feel heard, they'll feel understood. And then it is then an appropriate point shifting into that mantra of mine of springing forward with learning to go, okay, so what are you going to learn from this experience? What are you going to keep doing that's worked well for you? What are you going to do differently next time? is anything that you're going to stop doing. And if you can tap more into your empathy side of things, then that will be more supportive and learning rather than too much helping and sort of just doing things for people without them learning.
You work a lot with adults who are often stuck, and I'm one of those. There was a time in my life when I felt exactly that way. I felt stuck. I felt like I was lacking purpose in life. It can also be career related. How do you help them find their purpose and gain their courage?
Courage is actually one of the specific 24 strengths as well. So I'll come back to that in a minute. So purpose is one of the dimensions of being resilient. And I know you'll ask at the end how people can get in touch with us. But on my website, I have the resilience wheel, which has got 7 aspects to it. So if anybody asks me, okay, so how do I build my resilience, Russell? I go, look, there's this wheel and there's 7 aspects to it. Engage with your wheel in varying ways, all 7 aspects of it. And that's how you'll build your resilience. One of them is the purpose, which I mentioned at the start, what my purpose is. So, and it's not a question that you can immediately just walk into a room and ask a lot of people, so what's your purpose? There's a route into it. One of the routes into it is a different question about, so talk to me about the times in your life when you felt proud. That's a starting point to enable people to discover what their purpose might be. And sometimes that takes a little while. Some people need to think of some examples. So you do need to do some reflection. You might need to chat to some people. You might need to go for, a walk, get some pen and paper and scribble about when's the times of my life that I felt proud. Once you've started, you'll the floodgates will open and you'll get some experiences. Once you've got an example of what made you feel proud, then I want you to think of an acronym of a CAR, CAR, and that stands for Challenge, Action, Result. So when you've thought of one particular example of what makes you feel proud, then you need to break it down to go, okay, so what was the challenge at the start? What was the starting point? What was the example? Was it like, a really difficult time? Was it a project? Was I asked to build something? Was I involved in something? So what was the challenge at the start? And the letter A is action, which is what did you do in this example? How did you behave? Were you a leader or a follower? Were you a team member? What were your skills? What were your capabilities? What were your behaviors? What were your strengths? When were you energized? So put lots of things down around the actions and the behaviors and the strengths and the skills. And then what was the result of what you did? And when you do that for a few of them, the letter A is where all the great stuff is, because that letter A will be telling you and telling yourself actually what's important to you, what your value system is, actually what your purpose was in each of those examples. And then it will be demonstrating to yourself actually who you are as a human. And then you can translate that into, okay, for me to do more of that, that's my purpose. And so it also goes into, I ask a lot of my clients, have you got a purpose? Have you got a leadership purpose? So I'm also curious as well around actually everybody that's listening now, what's your parenting, your fatherhood purpose? What's people's answers to that? Now, I'm not about the fact that you have to have lots of purposes. That's not what I mean. There'll be one overarching one and they can all be interconnected. But sometimes when you ask people, what's your life purpose? And they say, so how does that translate into your leadership purpose? They have to do a little bit more thinking and reflection around it. So the route in to rediscovering your purpose is to think about this question of, when's the times in my life when I felt proud? What was the challenge? What were the actions that I did? And what was the result? And spend lots of time in the actions, because that will be explaining to you who you are as a person, what your value system, and then you can translate that into a purpose.
I want to go into an area that might be a little uncomfortable for some, but I think very much essential. Talk about numbing through addictions for reasons. Maybe it could be a divorce, it could be job loss, or it could be any traumatic event. Yeah. Are there healthier or more constructive ways to seek this dopamine rush that we're after to overcome the emotional lows and the force of a loss?
Yeah. So if anybody's, in that place or has been in that place now, I'm hopefully showing some empathy now. I'm just really sorry that that's happening for you. The simple answer to the question is there are better ways of facing into the emotions that you're having than, doing unhelpful behaviors around, alcohol or drugs or something else. Now, the way forward from this is once again, think about there's 7 aspects to the resilience wheel. So working or engaging with any aspect of that wheel has knock-on impacts on all the other areas. And one of the ones I want people to think about is one of the aspects of the resilience wheel is your support network. So the other thing that when I was reflecting on this question is for everybody that's listening now, it's how currently good are they at both asking for help and accepting help. Because when we go through really difficult times, and unfortunately, my wife has been very ill the last couple of years, and I've become her carer. And so I've been going through difficult times, and I have been querying myself on how have I've been offered a lot of help. And I've been thinking about when have I accepted it and when have I not accepted it. So we do fall into the trap of believing that we can, sort things out for ourselves and fix ourselves. So right now, everybody that's listening now, is just think about how do you answer the question. And Jonathan, that was a really good when I said it, of like, how good are you at asking for help and then therefore accepting the help? So you really do need to go to your support network. And if there isn't one there, you have to cultivate one. That's absolutely what you have to do at this moment in time. And as a result of that, you need to be open and curious. But it's also a state of readiness for this as well. So there isn't necessarily a simple answer, but it's a case of if you're feeling alone, it is absolutely about making the choice to literally put one foot in front of the other, to walk into a room and ask for some help. That's a really significant starting point for people around this. And then it's about allowing yourself to be open and curious about the help that you're going to accept. That's the best answer I have right now. There is a better way, which is what we turn to because it feels easier. But yeah, it's like how good are you at asking and accepting help?
I'm listening to how you're answering these questions and how you're just diving into the topic, and it is clearly evident to me that what really drives you, what really gets you going, is seeing people succeed. You feed, I can tell, you literally feed off of your clients getting unstuck and improving their lives and getting better. This is what gets you out of bed in the morning. I don't even have to ask that question. I know what gets you out of bed in the morning. Absolutely. And you make that very obvious to me.
Thank you, Jonathan.
So that might be asking, or maybe I'm already answering the next question for you, but why would you recommend that a dad work with a resiliency coach instead of trying to tackle some of these strategies on their own?
We can't do everything by ourselves. When you work with a coach, you will then actually be equipped with more tips, tools, and techniques to do things, for yourself. The point and purpose of the coach is to set you up to actually face into life's challenges and spring forward with learning when the coach isn't there. So I will be by your side, physically, virtually, and metaphorically. It's really interesting. Some of the feedback that I've had over the sort of decades is, do you know, Russell, I was just about to do something the other day with one of my team, and your voice was in my head. I was remembering back to one of the conversations that we'd had. I was just about to behave in a particular way, and suddenly your voice was in my head, and I changed my behaviors, and I got a better outcome. So that's lovely feedback to get. I suppose it's that question about what's the benefits of working with a coach, essentially. So it's that whole thing of like a coach is there to support you to discover whatever it is that you want to be different, better in your life, and enable you to get there and then part ways, essentially. But it has long-lasting impacts. So working with the resilience coach will actually set you up with resiliency skills for life. And who wouldn't want that, Jonathan? Who wouldn't want that?
Absolutely. There's a pride in getting to that point where you feel like you can master life no matter what it throws at you. You can't change what happens to you, but you can change what you do about what happens to you, and having those skills always with you. I can't think of anyone who would not want that.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And it's like was one client recently. If people want to look at my socials, I've got permission. It's a testimonial that's out there. But they really shifted from, they were in a, they had the ideal client is someone's got job title of head of or director of, and they were in a director of position, and they were taking lots of things out of the earth to build stuff. And they weren't happy, and they weren't, personal and work life wasn't great, and they completely and utterly shifted. They changed jobs, and last time I spoke to them, relationships with family are so much better as well, and they're in a completely different place doing conservation for the protection of birds. So they've shifted from taking stuff out of the earth to actually conserving the earth. And I mean, that's a significant transformational difference. And not all of my clients is quite as significant as that, but that's a recent one. And it's definitely something that I'm very proud for them that they've managed to achieve.
Russell, how can dads learn more about what you're doing or get in touch with you with questions or to get coaching? Also, how can they find your podcast?
So literally everything is on the website. So all the w's.theresiliencecoach.co.uk. The podcast that I have is on the homepage that's there. There's a form of Contact Russell, which is on there. There's umpteen blogs that are on there as well that people can read through. So that's the easiest way to get hold of us. I'm on, LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram. So The Resilience Coach. There's multiple ways about how you can get in touch with us. And just literally, I'm open to a, virtual cup of coffee, physical cup of coffee and a chat. That individual that I just talked about, the example that transformed, that 99% of all of that coaching was virtual. So it doesn't necessarily have to be face to face.
And just to make things easier, if you go to thefatherhoodchallenge.com, that's thefatherhoodchallenge.com. If you go to this episode, look right below the episode description. I'll have the link that Russell mentioned posted there for your convenience. And Russell, as we close, what is your challenge to dads listening now?
My challenge is how, not what, how are you going to enable and empower your children? That's my challenge.
Russell, I've learned so much from you in this episode. That's what makes this so much fun. And I know the audience did too. Just this conversation alone, I'm already feeling better about my day. So there's something to this.
Thank you.
So I thank you so much for being with me and being with us on the Fatherhood Challenge. I really enjoyed it.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Fatherhood Challenge. If you would like to contact us, listen to other episodes, find any resource mentioned in this program, or find out more information about the Fatherhood Challenge, please visit thefatherhoodchallenge.com. That's thefatherhoodchallenge.com.
I'd like to pause and thank our proud sponsor of the Fatherhood Challenge, Zencastr. If you've thought about podcasting before and realized that you need a lot of different tools and services, those days are over. With Zencastr's all-in-one podcast production platform, you can create your podcast all in one place and distribute to Spotify, Apple, and other major destinations. But the reason I personally use and trust them with the production of this syndicated radio program is their professional broadcast quality sound. There is no better time than now to start your podcast using Zencastr for all your needs. Go to zencastr.com/pricing and use my code FATHERHOOD and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencastr paid plan. I want you to have the same easy experiences I do for all my podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story.